Sin is present, but it is no longer dominant. It is present, but it is no longer dominant. To understand that, go back to Romans 6 for just a moment. And we'll look at Romans 6 and then a little later, briefly, at Romans 7. But in Romans 6, Paul shows us that sin is present but not dominant. Back in verse 5, talks about the fact that we have been united with Christ in the likeness of his death. We have also been united with him in the likeness of his resurrection. So we've had a resurrection. We're all Lazaruses in that sense. We've all been raised from the dead. Verse 6, our old self was crucified with him in order that our body of sin might be done away with, that we would no longer be slaves to sin. Okay, we're no longer slaves to sin. Sin is no longer master. Sin no longer rules and dominates over us. For he who has died is freed from sin. Verse 8, if we have died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Christ, having been raised from the dead, is never to die again. Death is no longer master over him. For the death that he died to sin once for all. The life he lives to God. Even consider yourselves to be dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Yes, but notice verse 12. Do not let sin reign in your mortal body so that you may obey its lusts. It assumes it's still there. But do not go on presenting the members of your body to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. For sin shall not be master over you. You are not under law, but under grace. What then? Shall we sin because we're not under law, but under grace? May it never be. Do you not know that when you present yourselves to someone as slaves for obedience, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin resulting in death or obedience resulting in righteousness? But thanks be to God, though you were slaves of sin, you became obedient from the heart to that form of teaching to which you were committed. Having been freed from sin, you became slaves of righteousness. Then in verse 19, he says, present your members, end of the verse, as slaves to righteousness, resulting in sanctification. So therein lies the issue. We have died with Christ, we have risen with Christ, we're like Lazarus, but we have a dead body still tied to us, and we can't shake it in this life.